Well, what we're going to touch on the subject today is what is cluster versus the conventional landed. So today we're going to do a brief video on this topic so that everybody understands the difference. Okay, there are about only 5% of Singaporeans are living in landed properties. Basically, because landed properties only cater to Singaporean only, and for PR, they have to apply a approval from the land dealing units. Foreigners, you can forget it. Most of the time, you apply, you will not get the approval. So at least a PR, and there are some criteria to actually comply. That the rules or the criteria is never very open, so we don't know likely what is the chances that you will get approval. So compared to what is available in the market, there's about only 70 over thousands of landed property in the whole Singapore as of today, compared to 300 to 400,000 of condo EC combined together. And the latest information from HDB, there are about almost 1.1 million of HDBs in the market. So you can see that the number of landed is really very limited. That's why it's always a kind of class of properties that a lot of Singapore dreams that they want to own a landed properties in Singapore. Of course, depends on your budget. Prices between cluster and the conventional landeds can be quite vast, especially in certain locations. The difference can be as high as $1,000 per square foot difference between a cluster and a landed. So a conventional landed is usually more expensive than a cluster, and basically they are cluster are more affordable and easy for HDB, EC, and even condo upgraders to able to upgrade to. Okay, and they are more sought after because of the affordability, basically. But the only problem now is cluster house is also very rare due to some limitation and the new rulings. So basically, we are looking at cluster house. The prices for this, especially good and very nice cluster house, the value will keep going up as there will be a limited supply, and developers will not be building this kind of properties probably in the near future. And you can actually still find a resale cluster house below 2.2 million or even below 2 million at this moment. It's still very nice area, okay? If you really look hard enough, you can still get those. And usually these houses are still very well maintained. For a conventional landed, I do my research, you also can still find some property below 2 million, all right? And this have a land area, or some of them have a land area about 2,000 square feet, which is actually very good size for a landed. But usually these kind of houses, the lease already run down to 40 years, so you left about 50 or less than that. So that is why the price. And on the other hand, is these houses are usually built long time ago, and the owner actually did not upkeep or rebuild it. So these are the houses that you probably has to rebuild it. Or do a major A&E, and it will cost you around, if it's an A&E, about 500,000 and above. And if you're looking at rebuild, it can be $1 million to 1.5 million. So these are the extra costs you have to add on your buying costs. And with the current pandemic situation, with the shortage of workers, I heard many stories about managing these workers, and even managing to maintain the cost now is also very difficult around this period. So think about it, whether you really want to go through all this hard work on building a new house by buying a very cheap conventional landed, or just move into a cluster housing, well maintained, almost at the same price. All right. So the flexibility, of course, there is a restrictions between cluster and landed. Okay, for landed, you can build as and when you like, as long as within the URA regulations. You get the proper necessary approval letters from the related authorities. You can actually tear down the whole place or do a major A&E and build up your dream houses within the constraint of the compound. But of course, we have some kind of class of landed properties, like those properties that under conservations, there's some restrictions. And of course, if you are building a GCB in a GCB area, there's basically the area around GCB that you can only run 15,000 square feet, and certain model of it Those are the rules that you have to actually regulate yourself when you rebuild the things, rebuild your house over there. But for cluster house, rebuilding is not a choice, because cluster house is more like a communal living, where you are actually on a big piece of land. The developer builds the houses, the facade, everything interior could be almost the same, only slight difference on certain place. You are not allowed to rebuild alone, because everything is already done and is within the confinements of all those approval. So if you buy a cluster house, you are restricted. You can only do renovation within your unit. Anything that touches the outside, the facade, usually are not allowed. Okay, especially for those who bought the cluster house with the open attic, with a very big open terrace, and some of them actually want to think of enclose it, build up extra space, a wall or some glass. You are not allowed to. So cluster house is pretty fixed when you bought it. Nothing much you can do on the exterior. As mentioned, cluster house is a communal housing. So very good developments like the Shaughnessy, which I mentioned, or maybe some new one like Belgravia Ace and Parkwood Collections. All these kind of developments have their own nice facilities. They include large swimming pools, they have gym, they have function room, and they have very nice basement, basically to have a proper parking. So cluster house is a communal, it's like a condominium. Instead of apartments, it is just a house. Then the outside area is actually the common space, where the pool area that you can use. These are suitable for young families with young children, where they really want to have the facilities but want to live in a house. So very suited. That's why we're seeing a lot of young families upgrade directly from condos, EC, even HDB, go direct into cluster house because they need the space, because their families growing. On the other hand, they need the facilities. And for landed properties, within your own house, you can actually still build your own pool if you want to. But we can see that the land itself actually limited the size of the pools you actually can build. So for normal in the terrace, it's pretty hard. We will have just a very small pool, and a lot of them is just only a deck pool, means it's above the ground. If you want the in-ground pool, you need a bigger land. And usually this pool you can't do laps, so it's more like a play pool, wading pool for the children. So it's not possible for you to build a very big gym inside your unit unless it's inside your house, basically. But it would be good for people who don't want the facilities but like the gardening. The landed property probably could be for your choice. And for cluster house, because of the facilities, you have to pay. The downside of it, you have to pay maintenance fee, and usually it ranges from 400 all the way to 1,002. But the good thing is there is MCST help you to maintain the communal facilities and even the grounds for you, so you don't have to actually worry about all this maintenance. And yearly upgradings is all done by the MCST. You don't have to worry. You just need to upkeep your own unit interiorly. For landed, if you are doing it alone, like changing the roof, painting up your house, the cost could be quite substantial, even though you don't pay the maintenance. But because you're going in alone, normally the cost will be quite high. So communal living has the advantage. And I would advise, if you are living in a cluster house, try to combine the whole developments if you can. Get a master contract to maintain the regular maintenance, like the lift, if you have a lift inside, and the aircon. Normally, you can actually bargain a very good price for yourself if you do it all in one lot. Okay, now we're going to come to parking. All right, for cluster house, you usually have 2 parking lots at the basement, right at your unit. And the new one now comes with the EV chargers, so it's more futuristic, future-proof, so that you can actually charge your electric cars in the future. Okay, so and some developments give you some extra space for your visitors. So these are the advantage of the cluster house, where your parking is more like taken care of. On the other hand, if it's conventional landed properties, unless the land is too small, for a general terrace house with about 1,006 square feet land, you should be able to at least park one car within your compound. You can actually build a shelter to cover over your car if you want to. And if you have a second or third car, then usually you have to park outside your compound along the road. Okay, so this could be a problem for certain landed area, especially those when you're along the road is very narrow, and some of them are actually illegal parking because there could be a continuous white line or double yellow line. So there is a risk of getting fined if you park your car out there. If not, you have to park quite a far distance away at the public car park. So these are the disadvantage if your landed area is actually doesn't provide you with a lot of parking and you have more than one car. And in the situation with landed properties, we have seen, especially festive season, where during the Christmas, during the New Year time, when you have party, that will be a problem because we have seen a lot of estate being jammed up by all these visitor cars, parking illegally, blocking everybody's, and that could be a nightmare. Some of them would not want to experience it. Given the scarcity of the land in Singapore, with this kind of cluster housing, especially now it's so sought after, why is it still so rare in Singapore, especially those with very nice facilities with gym and function room, big area? Well, one of the reasons is there is a rule change by the government in 2014 where the developers, when they build a new cluster house, they have to dedicate 45% of the total land area to the common area. 20% of this 45% will contribute to the facility like the swimming pool, gym, function room. The other 25% has to cater for the greeneries, the common area basically. So that is why there is a limited number of units they can actually build within a compound. So in that case, on the developer's point of view, they can't build as many units as before, because as before they only can only cater 30% to the common facilities and also the ground. Compared to now, they have to dedicate 45%. So they have built lesser units. So that means to say, lesser unit to sell, lesser profit. So that is why cluster house is going to be very rare in the near future, as the developer don't find it very profitable to build. Okay, in summary, our view is actually cluster landed is very affordable and feasible for those big, small, new families, especially if you have a HDB BTO flat that's already MOP, that's good value. Those who EC, that's already 5 years, or even a condo upgrader. These are actually an easier way to enter into landed properties. You go through a cluster house first because it's actually quite hassle-free. Maintenance, you have the facilities. Okay, slowly you can actually venture to a conventional landed. I'm not saying you can't hold your cluster house, but our dream is still owning a conventional landed. Basically, cluster house is more like a new family. So when your family grows, you don't need the facility anymore. You can actually move on to a conventional landed. And we have seen that conventional landed still, you can leave a legacy, because especially for freehold conventional landed, it is more like a long-term kind of investment. Okay, for cluster house, we see the appreciation of the cluster house appreciate very fast in a very short time, especially for the newer ones. For the landed one, it all depends on market. The last 2 years, the landed actually has went up very high. But there was a long time or period the landed house pricing was not moving at all. In fact, it dipped. Okay, that was before 2 years ago. The true data we can actually show you. If you give us a comment, we can send you the report. So there is actually two sides of market. So it's better for to start off with a cluster, which I always start with my clients, and then after that move on to a conventional. But if you want to straight to a conventional landed, by all means you can go in. But there is always a better selection if you are a younger family with facilities. All right. So give us your opinions in the comment sections below. Tell us whether you prefer the cluster or you prefer to go straight into landed cluster, conventional landed. Or maybe you can share with us an experience of living in a cluster and the difference between a landed if you have lived in both of these kind of houses. I'm Jen Tan. Always love to hear from you.